So previously I discussed on this program the 1933 picture Tarzan the Fearless, a separate entity from the Weissmuller canon, uniquely, at that time, produced by Sol Lesser, who would later hold the exclusive Tarzan film rights in the 1940s. Along with Tarzan the Fearless, the other unofficial Tarzan film of the 1930s, non-Weissmuller, was 1938's Tarzan's Revenge. It seems apt to discuss it briefly here now. This would be athlete Glenn Morris's sole outing as the Ape Man, starring alongside another famed Olympian, Eleanor Holm, who portrays not Jane, but Eleanor Reed, as it was deemed Eleanor Holm was so famous that the audiences in the theatre would simply not accept her by any other name than Eleanor. So goes the claim. Apparently this was Lesser's decision. The Weissmuller films are noted for their comedic tone and for portraying Tarzan as a comparative buffoon to Burroughs' initial vision, and these two Sol Lesser films weren't that much different. A couple of serials starring Herman Brix were released around this time, which were close to the novel's idea of Tarzan, though they weren't considered very strong productions otherwise. That being said, Sol Lesser's two productions did seem to be more action-oriented compared to the Weissmuller films, which were almost entirely comedic, especially by the 1936 debacle Tarzan Escapes. So in this respect, they are somewhat, if not entirely, preferable as cinematic Tarzan pulp than most of the Weissmuller entries. For two Brix serials I haven't seen all of, they didn't really grip me, to be frank. But fortunately at 70 minutes in length, Tarzan's Revenge does not outstay its welcome. The film features Eleanor and her party traversing the African wilderness in search of, among other native animals, a white crocodile. This never appears to amount to anything other than basic humour at false zoology, although we do see some real crocodiles. And lions, monkeys, parrots, even someone's pet anteater, apparently. If this was Hollywood, I'm sure someone just had an anteater on hand, or stock footage of one. I'm often stunned at how these stunt doubles are sent to just wrestle with a lion for a little while. Like, I hope they didn't have to do too many takes, right? I have to say, a part of me is more concerned about the lion. Hollywood hasn't been historically nice to animals, but still, I hope these stunt people were paid well. You might be wondering, who does Tarzan take revenge upon in this film? I am still wondering about that also. Tarzan rescues some lion cubs from being kidnapped by the greedy travelers. He vaguely himself kidnaps Eleanor from the party as a kind of joke. Later, he rescues her from one Ben Allo Bay to the cheers of her party. However, when she decides she wants to stay and be with Tarzan to be his bride, Eleanor's original fiancé, Neville, shoots at Tarzan, grazing his shoulder. Tarzan expresses his disdain for Neville, but does not come close to harming him. There's almost a proto-third man moment as Tarzan walks past Eleanor, almost as though he doesn't want to be with her now, seeing as this is how her cohorts react about this. However, the shot of Eleanor, not looking at Tarzan as he walks by her, fades into a brief scene of Eleanor's befuddled parents on the boat, and then back to Tarzan, diving into the water. And then, hey, it's Eleanor, and she dives in after him. Possibly a nice piece of deliberated will they won't they toward the end there. A genuinely fine piece of editing, I assume. How do I rate this film? You see, with a Tarzan picture, you enjoy it for the cheer of witnessing Tarzan do this or that, not necessarily for reasons which could make this film similarly enjoyable if it didn't feature Tarzan. I consider its basic adventurous tone to be endearing. I like the jungle footage, well, sets, and the animal antics, the kind of thing which is typical to not just any Tarzan film, but any Hollywood jungle film in general, although witnessing Tarzan gallivant about really seems to elevate a jungle production. Also, Glenn Morris not having any dialogue as Tarzan is an interesting change. It was the same essentially in Tarzan the Fearless. There was a bit of me Tarzan you Eleanoring, although that I think is the extent of Tarzan's spoken dialogue in this film. Tarzan's Revenge has been considered a potential nadir among the Tarzan film adaptations, and it certainly isn't one of the most lavish productions ever gifted to this IP in cinema, although the simplicity actually endears me. It doesn't have any distracting subplots, simply the main thread of Tarzan and Eleanor. It starts, it finishes, it doesn't hover over any, or very many, scenes explaining why there will be any subsequent drama in its plot. It just exists. The party goes through Africa, Tarzan follows them, interacts with Eleanor, she is kidnapped by an earlier established character, Tarzan rescues her, she decides to stay with Tarzan. An inferior Tarzan film due to its brazen simplicity, or one of the better ones, depending on your perspective.